Hey guys, this is Josh from Grapplezilla, and today I'm lucky to have a good friend of mine named Enrique Matute to come and tell about us all his theories on grappling, his history, etc. Now, Enrique is what I call a full spectrum grappler. He does judo at a high level, sambo, jiu-jitsu, freestyle wrestling, as well as MMA. So this is going to be a good one. Enrique, how you doing, man?
Very good, very good. It's a nice Sunday morning. It's like the second week of Easter if you go to the old churches, right? So it's been pretty good, and it's a nice warm day in Canada finally. We've been going through a
Oh,
lot of cold weather. Yeah.
oh yeah, Canada's definitely known for the cold, you know. I remember I used to live in Canada for many years, and I'm actually from Alberta originally, Alberta boy, Edmonton. But I remember Easter was always kind of the time when it would turn the weather. Uh,
Mhm.
yeah, and it was also a great time of the year, you know. Um, so Enrique, you're located in Kitchener, Ontario.
Yes, exactly. That's where my majority of my training is. But sometimes I have my in-laws in Mississauga, so the GTA area. So sometimes I get the benefit of going there, and I have good relationships with people there. So the main guys I've been training with recently are Kudo, the Kudo guys. You know Kudo.
Oh,
So it's pretty cool that he's a Polish guy. He did Taekwondo, but I like the idea of mixing because, like you said, I like to have it all my bases covered kind of a deal.
oh yeah.
So it's a different
Ku-
perspective.
How is it to train Kudo? Because Kudo is, I think, one of the most fascinating martial arts I've seen in the last 10 years. Kind of reminiscent of combat Sambo, but
Mhm.
I would say with better striking and not as good grappling as Sambo. What do you think?
I think that's fairly accurate. I mean, when I go there, I'm mostly learning the striking, and then from what I want to is the kazushi from striking, so the banking of balancing into the grappling. So like that's my main focus for that. And I would say, yeah, definitely, Sambo, the rules specifically are more towards the grappling. So you want fast throws, fast submissions. And I would say it's similar to Kudo, except for they want to stay on their feet more. And you can kind of see that even to today. You see there's some Kudoka fighting in MMA and even actually in the second UFC. You guys might remember, but Minoki Ichihara was Royce Gracie's first fight in the UFC too,
Yeah,
and he lost, but he did pretty good compared to like everybody else he fought. So I mean,
absolutely.
yeah. So that's why I like that. So yeah.
Very cool. You know, you have quite a extensive grappling, especially martial arts, but especially grappling. Like, how did you get started in martial arts?
So my first ever martial arts wasn't very long as karate. My neighbor did karate for self defense. It wasn't really my thing. Kids won't have fun. So, but then my mom, her friend is from former Yugoslavia, and she was a coach for them. So in I think 1996 World Championships in Hamilton, Ontario, she liked it and was able to come over first and then bring her family. And yeah, so they built a relationship. My mom actually she got an orange belt when she was before university, and so she always had that affinity towards judo. And at the time, I was learning a lot of martial arts, kung fu movies, Dragon Ball. Actually, Dragon Ball is the number one influence for me.
For a
And
long
then
time.
the Dragon Ball, like samurai films, right? Because it was Japanese. And then I was like, I wonder what the Japanese samurai used. And they were like, oh, jujitsu, modern style is judo. I'm like, okay. So I started doing judo because I was a smaller guy, not very tall. I'm right now maybe 5'9" on a good day. Usually it's 5'8", but um,
Depends how
I feel
cold it is outside.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, expanding contraction, right? Like a house. But yeah, exactly. Like I think, and it makes sense that the samurai would use mostly grappling because they wear armor, right? So the strikes they'll be more towards the open areas like here. But if you throw somebody, especially with armor, they're not getting up right away, and so that's when you would develop that. And so they figure out like this is actually good for being a police officer or even a civilian if you don't want to get in trouble for hurting people, right? So of
Absolutely.
course,
I, I mean,
exactly. That's
judo is. I think only now people are starting, to, especially in the West. In the East, they understand. In the West, they're starting to understand how good it can be if taught and learned correctly. This is the big thing,
oh for
you
sure.
know. Now, I you told me, and it's very interesting because I'm a freestyle wrestler. How you also did freestyle wrestling?
Yeah, exactly. That was the one that actually changed my perspective because before freestyle wrestling, that was one I took more seriously. First time I tried it, the first year in grade 7, I tried it and it was too hard for me because that was the first sport ever. And then this one kid who's like, "Oh, you're gonna try something again, you'll never do it again. You're gonna give up." So I was like, you know what? Just for that, I'm gonna stick up for the whole season. And for most of the time, I was getting my butt kicked because you need to be very fit, athletic, and disciplined. And I started getting that a little bit more, and I actually won 2 matches in the last tournament I was in grade 8. And then I really wanted to go to the judo again because I gave that up before wrestling, but then I stuck with it till today. And the only reasons I would stop was because of injury, right? Because I had like a shoulder injury because I posted out one time with my hand doing for like a kataguruma, which is a fireman's carry. So not a good idea, guys. A sprawl or take the fall. I always say that doesn't matter what tournament.
Yeah.
You can fight longer if you take care of your body.
Oh yeah, judo. I mean wrestling too, but judo really has a lot of people trying to break the fall incorrectly. And here's a little off topic, but
Yes.
you know, if you in the Olympics, I think it's the only time I would probably base out, and the only reason is because the reward of winning a gold medal is so much higher than the risk of breaking your arm. And I
Yeah.
think that's why you see it. So it's funny. I watch judo every Olympics, and all the people are like, oh, he's putting his arm to break. It's like, no, man, he just doesn't want to lose that medal because the guys from Azerbaijan probably is going to get $250,000 if he gets a medal,
Yeah.
right? So
100%. Yeah.
that's how he looks at it.
That's exactly it. I mean, in Korea, South Korea, they get a pretty good pension. And look at guys like Teddy Riner. Probably the best. I thought he actually this last Olympics he wasn't going to win, but then he started like picking up momentum as he further went on. Like he was expertly doing it. Like instead of having explosive, he'd play a game with them, get them riled up, and then throw them with big, beautiful throws.
Yeah, his judo is absolutely it's a spectacle to watch because it's all beautiful. It looks all efficient. His timing and his kazushi of reading the kazushi, and his also. I mean, the guy is a monster too. I mean, physically, you couldn't build a better judo player. Very heavy on the bottom, big butt, so the center of gravity is low. Huge legs, can bench press probably this like a car,
Yeah,
and
for sure.
very technical. And he's a winner, right?
Mhm.
The guy is. I love him. Who are your favorite judokas? Like who influenced you?
For me, growing up, I think Elias Eliades for sure. Like you probably know him. And then Arsen Galatsian, he won in 2008. Mansour Isayev. Uh, I like Kimura also too, because the legend of how he fought Ayla Gracie,
Yeah.
Maeda now, and then just because Maeda was really like very innovative at the time. If you read his books ever, because he has a new translated book. Keith Fargo, I'm not sure if you know him. He actually helped translate that book into English,
Oh.
and you'll see like these are his like newspaper clippings or personal opinions, and it's pretty interesting to see like how the mixed matches were a lot different than what we think they are now.
Yeah, I think also judo's influence back then. It was a crazy time, and I
Uh-huh.
think a lot of people don't give credit to judo that it needs, but it really influenced pretty much everything, right?
No, definitely.
So, how about in the end of the day, how about you went also to train jiu-jitsu and sambo. Now,
Exactly.
here's a question. Sambo we'll get to, but jiu-jitsu, what did you think going to the jiu-jitsu mat and seeing guys not so effective and maybe making mistakes according to judo, but to jiu-jitsu not? Was it, I mean, what was your first experience there?
So my first experience training jiu-jitsu was different than my first experience of jiu-jitsu ever. So I'm born in 1990, so I'm a 90s baby. And the Ultimate Fighter came out right in grade 9. And then the first thing you hear is about the Gracies, the Gracies, the Gracies. I'm like, okay, let me look it up. And then my first ever seen him in action was Gracie in action, like the pirated clips online of them fighting kung fu guys, and it made me feel like, oh wait, judo can work. This is pretty much because when I was learning it, I was old enough to learn chokes and arm locks, and I was like, okay, that's learned a little bit like how to break the distance, although very like bastardized version of that. Because even in high school, I'd never really gone to fights, maybe only twice, and it was almost like watching a Gracie in action video with more throws. So, yeah.
So like a lot of people, Gracie in action videos. I'm a bit older. I was born in the late '70s,
Yes.
so but I remember the first time I saw that. It was before the whole grappling revolution, and I
Mhm.
said, "What is this?" Because you know, the first fight, I was like, "Oh yeah, the kung fu guy is gonna kill him." Because I watch Bruce Lee movies. You know,
Yeah, for sure.
it's coming, man. They have no idea this guy's gonna dim mock them. And
Yeah.
then it didn't happen, and it repeated and repeated. And I said, okay, there's a method to this madness, right? It's not just once. And also, I think the Gracies themselves, they weren't these huge, big, muscular dudes. They were some guys from Brazil, very fit. I'm not saying they weren't strong,
Mhm.
but I didn't think it would be someone looking like that in terms of the body type. And it just changed. I mean, they changed the world, right? The
Yeah,
martial
for sure.
arts.
And I think they were still very much like, you'll read anything from Robert Drysdale or Shoke, like the documentary part of Jiu-Jitsu. There's obviously what the Gracies have their history, but then there's the more historical process, and you'll see that they were very stubborn, mostly self-defense oriented. And for them, there's a lot of, they're competing against Japanese catch wrestlers like which evolved into luta livre, capoeira, and they couldn't really compete with their athleticism, so they had to figure out Newaza, right? And it was like a duel mostly. Like, so you have like under the soft mat, and it would be just one person on one. So they figure out, well, I'll get them tired. I'll cut out the guard, and then that's what they'll do it, right? Because the
Yes.
Japanese, they were very good at everywhere, but they noticed that for them to catch up in any type of combat, they had to be on the ground. So that's kind of how it started.
Yeah, there's the Gracies. A lot of people love them. A lot of people hate them. There's a lot of banter around their history, but at the end of the day, they did do one thing that I think really revolutionized. They emphasized fighting off your back. So they took a really bad position and made it into, it's almost like a Venus flytrap, right? You think you
Yeah,
have it's good, and then you go in their guard. And even the close guard of all the guards isn't the best for your mobility and stuff, but they were able to use that to make the person tired and then go for the submission or reversal and kind of beat the crap out of them on the mount. But
yeah,
they were fantastic. And at that time, there was a lot of catch wrestling and luta livre and etc. And I mean, they were beasts. These guys, right? They were not weaklings at all. So in my opinion, what the Gracies did was great. A lot of people, and I'm on some other podcasts that maybe hold different views, and I always listen, but I do think what they did to the martial arts, and I think also, would you agree that jiu-jitsu is a very defensive martial art?
yeah. I'd say so, especially from the Alio side of the family. If you look at Carlson, depends on which Gracie, right? Because you'll have
Yeah.
The junior, and like his dad Carlson, he knew everything on the back. Like, I heard stories where they'd always train a guard. That's only because they knew that if it got there, they need to defend themselves. It's the worst position. If you're good there, you're confident there, you'll be confident anywhere else. And so, like, pins, actually, even though they don't emphasize pins as much in sport jiu-jitsu, like the ATC, well, maybe ATC they do a little bit, but in IJBBF, the pins are critical, I think, because the knee on belly, like all the positions that score your points, that's where you want it. Because in Vale Tudo, if you don't get if you sacrifice position over submission, and the guy is smart, it'll be a short fight for you.
He's
Unfortunately,
going to get on top really quick and start throwing those shoot box at the time hands, right? You
yeah,
know, I think you said something very smart. I think the pin is incredibly important to understand and know. And I think it's the one element that, because it's not focused in jiu-jitsu, that's what makes jiu-jitsu great. But because it's not focused in jiu-jitsu, those people who know how to capitalize on the fact they know how to pin and get onto the top end up winning in the MMA fights. And we see that with, I think, the Dagestanis over a lot of the Brazilians. It comes down to, you see them, they work to get that pin position, and then they start chipping away and getting them. You know, and how about Sambo? How did you start Sambo, by the way?
Sambo. So my first experience was in a judo camp in the States called Spear the Eagle, and the coach they had there was Igor Yakimov. So if you guys remember 2000s and 90s, he was the Sambo representative in North America for a long time.
It was in Ontario, too.
And Ontario, I think Ottawa, and then before that, he was in Newfoundland, which I wonder if there's any like Newfie Sambo over there, you
Oh,
know?
good question, yeah.
Yeah. But I met him, I'm like, man, this is different. Like, I've always thought, Sambo is like, oh, it's just the weird judo with the pants and and that. But then there really was something different, you know. And then from there, I was watching even the representatives of judo in the UFC. There was Carl Parisian. So if you look at Caro and Manny, they trained under Gokor, and Gokor is a sambist. He's a judoka, and then he also trained catch wrestling and judo under Jean Labelle.
I
So
think he
it's
also did Greco in Armenia as well, from what I
actually, I think that's
understand.
what you're right. I think he started in Greco, which is
Yeah, because I
incredible.
think once you get out of the womb in Armenia, you pretty much get into Greco. So you know, I mean, those guys are very good at Greco.
It's probably the hardest grappling. If you ask me, Greco-Roman is really hard. Like it's fun to do, but really hard to watch sometimes.
Oh God, yeah. If Greco is the one thing I always say. We have this argument that, I mean, after I've had an operation, so I haven't trained for, let's say, since January.
Mhm.
But we always have this argument. So I'm a huge fan of freestyle wrestling, but I think Greco, I always say, can be the most boring thing you could watch ever. But when there's action, man, highlight reels like no tomorrow. And I do think that it's the hardest. It's also very fast. People don't think it's fast, but the footwork's very different.
Mhm.
Um, Also, the amount you have to use your abdominal muscles, I think it's much more in Greco than in freestyle. But yeah, I mean, have you ever done Greco, like
I've
competitively?
only done like a little bit drills for Greco, but never trained. I know a local guy in Kitchener. He has a gym called what's it called? Olympics Martial Arts Academy, and they focus on wrestling into MMA. So like they're pretty good. He actually won the Greco-Roman Nationals a couple of years ago, and he was a
Yeah,
freestyle guy. So I'm thinking maybe one couple of days I might train with those guys. But that's some pretty solid guys. Like for some reason, the region has a lot of MMA fighters now. You know.
oh yeah, and also for you, I think Greco would be like second nature because there is some kind of trade off to judo, the stance, the more upright, and the way judo has a lot of twisting in the throws, like the.
Mhm.
So I definitely think that would be amazing for that. Now your influences in sambo, wrestling, and BJJ. Because every martial arts got. I mean, when you start, you have influences. Because you say, "Oh, that guy moves well. I'd like to move like that." Then you find out that maybe your body's not the same, so you move
Yeah.
like someone else, right? So who are yours?
So for judo, there was a time where I copied a lot of Elias Iliadis. Uranage a little bit, and like I like the Georgian style. So I have like I use the grips once in a while, but you have to be careful because if you don't do it properly, you'll get suplex pretty easily, right?
Yeah.
But I copied a lot of some of the basics. So like I liked watching Japanese judo. So I'd say Inoue, maybe not the way he does Uchimata, but his grips I found like influential. Jimmy Pedro and Roddy Ferguson. They're two guys from the United States. They're on the same team at one point,
Yeah.
and they emphasize the kumikata, so hand fighting in judo. So I really try to really focus my hand fighting with foot sweeps. And if you look at the foot sweeps, they're integral to everything. Like you'll see it in freestyle to a degree. You'll see it a lot in samba. You'll see it in actually in Chinese wrestling and Swai Jiao and Bulk. You'll see that a lot there. And
For
those are
sure.
some of the
Yeah.
oldest recorded grappling styles. For sambo, when I say for combat sambo, I like Fedor a lot and
Of
Habib and
course.
Islam, those guys. And then even
Amazing
some of
guys.
Team Fedor guys, like they're really good, like Vadim Nemkov, and there's Yaroslav Amaslav. So he's upcoming. I think he's going to fight in the UFC soon. He's a Ukrainian guy, so I think he's finding it difficult because he actually does fight for Ukraine in the war, but he takes time off and then goes and competes. So it's actually pretty crazy he's able to do that, and then even the Ukrainian military allows him to. So yeah.
You know, it's an interesting thing, and I'd like to pick at your brain on this. Um, Sambo has been really doing well in MMA.
Mhm.
I mean, the first wave, you could argue, is Oleg Tuktarov, but it wasn't a showcase that was wow, although it was nice.
Mhm.
But when Fedor came, that was just,
Mhm.
I think, the perfect expression of what Sambo should be. And then, of course, Khabib came, and then you have Islam.
Mhm.
And of course, a lot of the Dagestanis on their team come from a Sambo background. Why is it doing so well in MMA, in your opinion?
I think if you look at the former Soviet style, because you look at even Shakhmavad, he's part of that Soviet style. So they're very eclectic. They take what is useful and they go with it. And they also adapt techniques for their body and not necessarily try and copy their coach or sensei, you know? So the coaches dial in really and focus on what works for their body structure rather than what their coach thinks. So the coach will watch, and actually I read a couple books from judo from the Russian perspective and Russian judo. So those are from Andrei Mushanov and Alexander Itsavik, and they're talking about how the first couple of weeks of doing judo or sambo, it's just pretty much just conditioning. So they keep the guys who will stay, and then from there they'll see what techniques work for them. So if you go that way, it's going to lead to a higher success in combat sports. And they do a lot of research, and they're very professional. Like you look at jiu-jitsu, it's it's professional in the sense that they get paid, but in the way they train, they'll often go to other camps and they'll be real open. Whereas the samba camps, when they're closed, it's very hard to get outside guys to come in and train with them because they want to make sure nobody's spying on them. Because in the former Soviet countries, the coaches even benefit from success, right? So they can get a better apartment back in the Soviet days, uh, scholarships. So it's very much incentivized for them to have success.
You know, I think what you said is, I think the Soviet system, first of all, was very, very, uh, I guess scientific is the right way. It was very logical. And they took, I think, I would say a slower approach into building the person compared to let's just rush as many techniques. And what is kind of interesting is you said that they do the fitness first, like for the first maybe 1 or 2 months, and whoever's weak leaves, but also whoever's committed stays, right?
Uh-huh.
And a lot of the freestyle wrestling teams in Canada and the U.S., this is actually how they operate. Not for the varsity guys who are already accepted, but there are guys who come in, and I think it's an excellent way to build a team because everyone says, yeah, you weed out the weakness. It's not that. It's you find the guys who really want to be there, and then you're not wasting time. Um, you also train in MMA, right?
Yep. Exactly. Yeah. So mostly like it'd be there's two classes. So we used to have this wrestling for jiu-jitsu, but then it started becoming more wrestling for MMA. So learning how to break the distance, making sure not to get shot in, which I really appreciate. And it's mostly drills. So that in between stage of striking and wrestling is actually the most critical for MMA if you think about it. You can defend, you can attack from there, and even like combine it with the jiu-jitsu. So like they have like if there's tournament closer for jiu-jitsu, they'll adjust for those rule sets, right? So singles on the inside of the hip instead of the outside of the hip to make it to a double. But I still like going for a single outside, like a high crotch, and then going to a double from there. That just depends on what the opponent gives me, right? Because I'm a natural lefty, so it depends on what they do. So I have to really figure out. And actually, I find I have more success now because everybody knows I'm doing the judo throws, the big high throws. So I have to work on the low level takedowns now. So it
Yeah.
actually helps my benefit.
By the way, the single to a double leg is one of my favorite because there's a saying in wrestling: the easiest technique to get, I'm not saying finish, is a single leg, because to get that leg is quite easy, and the hardest technique to finish is the double leg.
Okay.
Easiest technique to finish is a double leg. I'm sorry. So you basically enter, and then they give their hip positioning to you, and then it's quite easy to get a double.
Mhm.
For a guy like you, especially, and also like I'd imagine. I mean, when you're competing, when you're training, you're not throwing guys on their head all day long, are you? Because
No, I think I'm also 35 soon. So like, I think it's beneficial for both of us to do more drills because actually, I've been not sure if you interviewed him, but he did a clip, Sambo Steve. Actually, so one of
yeah,
my inspirations. He's a very good because he has trained guys who compete at high level MMA. He met Fedor. He actually knows a lot of the Sambo community. And he says drillers make killers, and so does my friend Russell, who also has a good judo program locally. And we would rather drill more because if you do all the hard training all the time, your body is not meant to do that all the time. There's a time
yeah, I
for it,
agree.
but you have to dial in later on in the camp and then relax because you only have one body and you don't have any spare parts, so you got to take good care of it.
Absolutely, man. We have what God gives us, and just take care of it. What's interesting with that. Uh, type of training, methodology. A lot of people don't know. So Cuba's a great freestyle wrestling nation as well as judo, but freestyle wrestling, Greco, I mean, these guys rock, right? And they usually have a 4-year plan for the wrestlers. And what happens is a lot of times the wrestlers aren't wrestling as hard as it gets. And actually, off season, they have more of a type of bodybuilding type of routine where they do high rep, but it's to avoid a lot of the injuries. And only towards competition do they start picking up, putting more CrossFit type drills or what you'd see people do, and also the hard wrestling. And I think this is the way to go because I mean, to go 100% all the time, and there are guys who do it, but you end up like not being able to walk at 46 or 48, and it's just not worth it. You want to spend time with your kids, etc. Right? Of course, you just had, was it your first baby girl?
First baby girl, yes.
Wow, man, that's amazing, huh? How old now?
So she would have been, so she's over 2 months. So she's 2 months last Saturday. So it would have been like on Easter Vigil. So it was awesome. Yeah.
That is so awesome. And how is it? How is it to be a father?
It's good. I think I'm the oldest of my brothers. So I think I was like always kind of looking forward to it, but it felt kind of natural. Not saying it wasn't hard or difficult, but I think my whole life is kind of doing difficult things and then finding, enjoying the process, right? Like I think really grappling in a way has helped me, and martial arts has really helped me.
Sure.
Yeah.
But you can't tap out when she's crying. I gotta say, you gotta, you know, and but also, I think you, if I remember correct, you're from a Nicaraguan family. Am I right?
My dad's from Nicaragua.
Yeah. So I imagine family is just huge in that,
Huge, huge, and especially my dad. He'd always telling us as sons how important it is, right? And especially like when the era that he grew up and his parents grew up and grandparents is very important. Even if there's a civil war, my dad would say like, "Oh yeah, do you know these people?" And they're like, "No, this is the same name, whatever," because they knew that what they're asking was like to snitch on them. They would purposely not snitch, even though it could get them in trouble. They were like, well, they wouldn't hand over their own family, even if there's
That's
a
the way to go.
Yeah.
Blood is thicker than water in the end of the day. And it's family, or God and family. This is the tenets, I think, to have a great life. And I think the way the world has gone the last maybe 20 years, a lot of people have forgotten that. I'm not saying you haven't, and I haven't. And you just see an emptiness in them. And then that causes them to behave in some really, let's say, psychotic ways in a lot of times. But I completely agree with you, man. Have you fought in MMA yet, or?
No, the closest would be, so there's contact jiu-jitsu, which is I think in Europe they have something called sport jiu-jitsu. So they're trying to, like, it's like kind of like a mix between karate contact, like a semi-contact, and judo. So they're doing a full contact version. I competed in that, and I competed in combat sambo quite a bit. I think I have, my record is 3-1. So
Fantastic. Yeah, combat sambo is actually quite hardcore.
Yeah,
because you have some real killers in there, and sometimes they, like, I 2 podcasts ago I interviewed a very good friend of mine. I think you know him, Tariel Abasov.
Oh yes, I know him. I used to talk to him more back in the day, but I think we both got busy. But I recall him.
Nicest guy, straight as an arrow, and combat sambo. He said of all the things he's done, that was the hardest, because a whole tournament comes and you have to fight and fight and fight, and it's just such a fast sport, right? Because you might get a real killer one round, you might not. I think combat sambo is great, and the only thing I find is, and I've always wondered, how is sambo doing in North America? Is it growing? Is it stagnating? Because it should be bigger. I think it should be bigger than it is.
Yeah, so I would say in the Spanish-speaking North America, so like Mexico, actually Nicaragua for a while before the current issues with what's going on COVID-wise and everything before that, it was growing, because even in Nicaragua they had it in the university, so they have judo and they'll have sambo as well. And I think the judo is definitely influenced from the Soviet Union, because they would send students over there to learn, and they come over like with judo background, but also it's a sambo base. So if I ever get a chance again, probably hopefully soon to go to Nicaragua, there's actually a school that has a judo sambo program. So I want to experience that and see what the
So
cross
cool.
pollination happens. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that yeah. I remember in South America, also Argentina. I think they just had a huge samba competition there, and I always found that interesting. And I think it has to do a lot with the back in the day, the Soviet influence of there, and of course Soviet sports came,
Mhm.
and sambo being also a relative of judo. They are very similar, or I would say sambo is part judo. Judo is not part sambo, but it definitely made sense. I just don't see it growing in North America. Like, I'm sorry, not North America, the U.S. and Canada as fast as I thought it would. And I
Yeah,
don't know if it's that. It could it be jujitsu culture? Could it be that just lack of teachers? Like you have great teachers, like Vlad Kulikov, for example, and Sambo Steve. These are two high level guys, right? Especially Vlad. Like Vlad, in my opinion, is one of the best grappling instructors in the world by far.
I think so. I
You know,
agree.
and like I don't understand why people don't train there. Like that's the first guy I would go to. You
Yeah,
know?
for sure. I think too. Well, this is Canada, right? There's a lot of red tape around sports. So I know there's somebody who is currently looking into getting a PSO, so a provincial sanctioning body for sambo in Ontario. But it's a lot of money, a lot of time, and you have to be very dedicated, right? So even recently, there was supposed to be like a Canada Open in Saskatchewan and Saskatoon. Not a lot of people were showing up, so they had to cancel it. So um,
It's gotta
I,
suck.
it's hard because you want people to come, right? And people like the idea of something, especially judoka, jiu-jitsu guys. But I think when it comes down to it, it's kind of intimidating, right? The rules are a little bit off for people. Like for me, I understand it, right? If you did a wrestling or judo, it's like a mixture of those two, right?
Yeah,
It's a
for sure.
qualitative and a quantitative sport. Um, there's a lot of mat work, but the mat work is not scored based on the position points in jiu-jitsu, so that takes away their advantage. It's based you get pinpoints once, and then if once you get those pinpoints, whether it's 2 or 4 points, you have to continue wrestling. So arm locks and leg locks are big. Um, so I can see why, especially because it'll be faster paced. For jiu-jitsu guys, they more finesse, right? So I don't think
Yeah.
there's time for them to finesse as much as they would like to. So with
Also, you
that said,
can't jump guard.
yeah, exactly. And the guard actually, closed guard, you can use it, but if you're there too long and I'll have pin to pin chest, I can be my points for a pin. So you have to
Yeah.
be very active with it.
So, to our audience, one of the issues in grappling sports is if you ask an older guy what the rules are and he's not up to date for the last couple of years, it always changes everywhere. Okay, there's always little nuances, especially, I mean, freestyle wrestling and judo have them a lot. But Sambo, when I remember that you weren't allowed the guard and you weren't allowed chokes, if I remember correct,
Yeah.
which might still be there. But now, yeah, I heard that you're allowed the guard, but they have the pin, which actually I think is quite an interesting play. Like I think jujitsu guys should sometimes uh, roll with the ability to have a pin considered in the guard, and that'll I think build a very good attribute for them to not have a lazy guard and have a good position where they're not flat on their back. But I mean, yeah, I always found that to be quite an interesting. And I think I know that Canada's had some world championships of freestyle wrestling. Actually, in Edmonton, I think they had one. They at least had one, but maybe they even had two. I'm pretty, and I'm. You know what? I might be wrong, but I think also there was a sambo world championship in Canada. Am I
Yes,
right?
I think so. Because the odd thing about sambo, before the first international tournaments were held under FILA. So FILA, now it's UWW.
Yes.
And then right before the Soviet Union fell, they had FIAS. But then a lot of things happened. They had FIAS East and FIAS West. And then it actually happened again in the 2000s. So in Canada, actually in Canada and the States, there was usually two organizations that represented two different FIASes. And so that I think also played into confusion of like, what should I go to? Should I go to this guy's tournaments or should I go to this guy's tournaments? Now it's kind of consolidated more. I think FIAS is more united, but it's for now, right? Like, I mean, it's also very Soviet-esque, and people can't tell the difference between Russia and Soviet Union, and so it's they have I guess they have misconceptions of what sambo is, right? So
Oh yeah. Sambo. one of the interesting things also they think it's just judo,
Mhm.
but it's so much more. I mean, it has a lot of influence from those Soviet folk wrestling styles, especially
Mhm.
Chidaoba. That's the big one that has huge
That's
influence.
correct.
You know, Tranta, and they have Kuresh and all that. But it's an interesting. Uh, when the founders of Sambo were building it, it was. I mean, that would actually make an interesting movie, right? Just how they
Mhm.
went everywhere, and it even has catch wrestling in it, from what I understand too. And
That's probably
yeah,
too. And actually, the striking part originally, it was Western boxing, so both Sabat and boxing. And then when combat sambo became more sportified in the 2000s, the base was Taekwondo and boxing, and then it was knockdown karate. And if you go to North America, Muay Thai is really big, so Muay Thai, obviously. And I want to see if I wonder to know if there's like for people who don't have Muay Thai, I wonder if Sanda would be a good base.
ooh,
Yeah.
I'm a so I have a weird opinion. I think the Chinese, that the guys who do Sanda, if it keeps on growing, they're going to be a real problem in MMA soon. All they got to learn is just a little bit how to finesse their wrestling a bit, just a
Mhm.
bit, and the groundwork. Because I think that striking style for MMA, especially if you're into grappling, I think it's just perfect because it takes in consideration that throw. Sambo has that too, but not like Sanda. I think Sanda really has. Have you ever tried Sanda?
Um, actually, yes. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Dynasty fight gear. There was a Canadian brand actually that focuses on martial, especially Asian Chinese martial arts, and so they have like jujitsu gear, but with the emphasis on the more Chinese aspects and Filipino and everything. And they had Lavelle Marshall, who's Swai Jiao champion and now Bok champion, and
Oh, is that
Sabir.
the black guy, the really big? Wow,
Yeah,
he's a beast, man. That guy is
he's
a beast.
he was big before when I met him, but now his current size to his old size is completely different.
I like that guy, man. That guy has got some talent, and it looks like he has a really open mind. Like,
Mhm.
man, what a good ambassador for Bocha.
Yeah, definitely. And then he was there, and then Sabir Bogatinov, he was from the same gym as Magomed Shapirov and Muslim Salikhov. So I think that's Direction of Five Wins in Dagestan. And so he did the stand-up part, and I was like, "Oh, this is different." Like it was very interesting to say the least. And there's actually a local they do kickboxing, but they're kung fu school, so they do sanda. I would like to trade it, but it's like I don't have time to go there and all the time. But hopefully in the future there'll be some kind of cross training.
For sure. You know, that's a great thing about martial arts, especially when you get older, and if you have a experience in several of them, when you cross train, you can pull from them much faster.
Mhm.
You know, that's why you see a lot of the older guys able to get black belts very fast in other arts because they know a lot of the basics, etc. It's just the rules or the goal of the martial art which changes generally. You know, and do you think, like, you're a complete grappler? Grappling has been going through some huge revolutions. Okay, for example, let's say not this ADCC, but the ADCC before and before the two before, we really saw a huge evolution of leg locks into the game, and
Mhm.
now we see wrestling to counter the leg lockers, so they get the top position, etc. Now, what do you think is going to happen in terms of the evolution, the next evolution? And I think wrestling is going to be for a while.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. If you look at the throws, like there's wrestling and there's like the more higher throws, like the haragoshis that which wrestlers do,
Yes,
drop seanagis, because if you can able to get those two throws particularly, you can avoid the lower game for yourself and just dominate the top position, right?
for
And
sure.
the lower leg lock game works mostly for the smaller guys. Look at Maki Musimeshi. He's really expert at that. The Rotolo brothers. And I think the Rotolo brothers are actually good wrestlers too, to be honest with you. For what they're focused on, they're pretty explosive. So yeah.
They're really, and they're also training now for MMA with Eric Paulson. You know, very open mind.
Mhm.
And actually, a question about Haragoshi. Would you? So when I think of Haragoshi, I think it's one of the best throws for really big guys.
Mhm.
You know, what would you say to that?
I say so. I mean, I also use it for myself. It just depends on the grip. So I think I've used the Wizard grip, and I also use like the underhook too. So it depends. Underhook has like more, you can push up more, whereas the Wizard, you're kind of more in a defense position, you're waiting for them to attack you in a sense.
Do you find trying to do a drop seonagi different when you're nogi with wrestling? Like, I'm not a great thrower. I usually am very good for the legs, but one of the throws I have a very good shoulder throw, and I have a good setup for it. But I always found the judo guys interesting because they go much lower
Mhm.
and through the guy underneath him. So, what's your experience with that?
That's the way I would train it, yeah, because like uh, the whole point is to be qualitative, so you can't really, you sh- like in muscle technique, it depends on how you score the point, right? That could be a wazari instead of ippon, so they found a way to go a little bit lower. It looks a lot more effective when you hit both shoulders, right?
Ah, okay.
That's
Okay,
why it's like that.
that's to combat the wazari. Okay, that's something. That's an element I actually never thought about.
Yeah, and I
That's
think
that's
I like the modern ones are pretty good, but the one problem I have is the ippon, the rolling ippons, right? Because for me, part of ippon is control, but if you're rolling and getting re-rolled, then do you really have control of that technique?
it's the most common question I get. I make reels for anyone who doesn't know on Instagram. It's a passion of mine as well. But one of the you'll get guys saying, "Yeah, he threw him, but then he got rolled again, and the guy ended up top. So how did he win?" And I say this is the thing. It's kind of like tag. Whoever tags each other first, just the tag is ippon. But yeah, that's a very good point, man. You know, where's you've I mean you've competed quite a bit. I
Mhm.
mean, where's the have you competed outside Canada?
Most of my summer tournaments are in the States. So it would be the Arnold, Michigan, Connecticut. So yeah, I'd say there, and it depends there because there'll be some for countries from people from countries like the former Soviet Union. They have jiu-jitsu guys, and actually my friend David Dempsey, he trains a lot of guys who are folk style wrestlers, and those guys are pretty talented themselves.
For sure.
And actually, one of those guys actually he won the nationals a couple of times. He might be going to Pan Americans for combat. He said he's focusing more on the combat because he previously he was a professional MMA fighter. I'm not sure if he's still going down that route, but it's just easier for him to kind of train because if you just do both sport and combat, there's different things that to focus on. So I agree with that focus. You can do both because people who have won um, the sport and the Pan Americans combat, and I think I'm not sure if anybody has won this speech sambo as well, but it's just about getting mat time. So whenever I go to the States, I try to sign up for combat and sport.
Okay, so that's hardcore. You know, to do both in one, it's how do you keep yourself with energy there? Like if you get into the later rounds.
And usually they'll know and they'll try to accommodate for me. So I try to have eat healthy, like eat things that are high energy and dissolve in your stomach slower. So like yogurt, um, oats, figs,
Banana?
banana too. Yeah, bananas. Yeah, actually bananas. Yeah, those things are really good for you. So like it's like you can eat any food, but really you should really focus on quantity closer to the tournament rather than the quantity of the calories.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Unless you're in the heavyweight division.
Yeah.
I forgot his name because my memory is going. There's one massive Sambo guy internationally. I mean, even at the heavyweight division, he's just, I don't even know how much this guy weighs. He looks to me like he's 250 kilos, but of like fat and muscle. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I think I know. I can't think of his name either, but yeah, there's a couple of big guys like that too.
I
But
mean,
yeah,
I have one guy who's like, oh, yeah, that's an easy guy to wrestle. I said, I don't know, man, because if you screw up on one throw, that weight is landing on you,
yeah,
and
long weight too, right?
yeah, and he knows how to land and keep it there too. So, like, I don't know. We've been sold a lot of things like through movies and maybe fantasy books this guy's reading, but I mean, you never underestimate a big guy, especially if it's a sambo player.
Oh yeah, like
You know,
anybody. You can look at wrestling. You see some of the big guys have some good matches. Um, it's funny because in wrestling you'll see even like the shorter guys, like yes, Donnie.
oh
That
yeah,
guy's 5'8" and he was thick.
Oh,
And
oh yeah. Oh, he was. So he had a thing. His stance, you couldn't move him off his stance, man. He was so low, and he had tree trunks as the legs. I remember the first time I saw him. I was like, I saw him live, and I just like, what is this creature, man? Like, how do you fight that? That should be in a Marvel movie, you
yeah,
know? But yeah, Yazdani. The Iranians themselves are just amazing at wrestling. People don't understand how good they are. They really are.
and actually, that's one of the first time I saw like a very good foot sweep was from Yazdani. Like he did like what we call in judo Hatashita, which is you step forward and kick the foot forward, and he did it perfectly. I'm like, man, I didn't know you could do that without the jacket. He proved me wrong, which is awesome.
You know who there was? I mean, obviously Saitiev was good at foot sweeps, but also there was a wrestler named Besik Khordakov. You
Mm-hmm.
know that he died prior to the Olympics, and he was pretty much the favorite to win. But his leg work into sweeps or just blocking,
Mm-hmm.
phenomenal.
Actually, I do like the Saitiev brothers too. I've looked up into the other guy you mentioned, but the Saitievs are what I like to watch for wrestling. Um, there's also Frank Camiso. I like him
Oh,
too.
Chamiz, wow, he's amazing.
Yeah. Oh man, he's like the Cuban guys. Like you're saying, like they have a good footwork. It's like they're dancing, and then explosivity. When they throw you, you know you're throwing.
Oh yeah, you know, there's two when it comes to physicality in wrestling. The best of the best are the Americans when it comes to being in physical shape, but also the Cubans. It's just very different. The Cubans kind of go, but when they go like 0 to 60, I mean, there's like it's very hard to stop them, man. I mean, pure athletes, you know. But yeah, foot sweeps. I think foot sweeps might be the most underrated uh, technique that jiu-jiteros don't emphasize. I think
Mhm.
like jiu-jitsu guys don't understand how easy it is to sweep someone once you understand how to do it properly. But now regarding MMA, here's a question. What MMA right now, the evolution has came to basically two camps. You either have these Dagestani or very good wrestlers, also American wrestlers, who have some good boxing and some submissions, and they're smashing it, or we're seeing more and more kickboxers who are very hard to hit and they knock you out, like Pereira. Although he did lose his last fight, but I'm pretty sure no one would want to get into a fist fight with him without being prepared. Where do you
100%.
think it'll evolve after this? Because I believe it's going to evolve heavily.
That's been. I think that's a good question. So, I mean, at this point, everybody thought they knew the formula, right? You can only do Muay Thai, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and the American folk scholastic wrestling. But then recently, we have international guys from all over the place, and they're showing us, no, you actually it's the more of the methodology you use than the style you use. Because we're seeing even now, Sanda guys or traditional karate guys adapting. It probably takes them a lot longer because I feel like in those they're more traditional than practical. Although now in Kung Fu we know they have Sanda and those versions, so um, they're learning how to adapt to the rules because now you can't just be a wrestler and go in MMA. I think wrestlers are still dominating to a degree, but it's not the style anymore. It's the actual athletes themselves. Same with kickboxing. There's a high level, but you look at pro kickboxing, not like boxing where you make lots and lots of money. So sometimes they're like, oh, there's nothing left for me to do in kickboxing, so I'm going to come here into MMA and then dominate that world. And then for a long time, a lot of people weren't used to that level of striking, and so they both have things to learn. That's for the kickboxing. The key is their footwork. If you can't get their footwork, it's going to be scary to fight them because if you can't hit them, you can't touch them, then it's like you're done. Scary. Like watch Anderson Silva, who we fight. Like when he fought Chris Lieben, that was a scary fight to watch. You know.
Yeah. You know, I absolutely agree with you. I've I do think that it's the methodologies that build the fighter. There are some technical, but like in the end of the day, a kick is a kick for the most part. A throw, you have different types of throws, but basically they can be counted to high level, low level, single or double leg. If it's high level, are you inside or outside on which side arm? Where's his hip? Basically, actually, what it comes down to is I've always thought, where's his hip placement? or her hip placement, according to your hip placement. I think this is for me the key to throw, as well as the footwork. If the hip is, for example, perpendicular, and you have a certain grip, which would be the kumikata in judo or the hand fighting wrestling, it's going to mitigate which I think that's the right word, which throw you probably going to have done to you or do. And I think right now, in my opinion, I think we'll see a lot of fighters from China and even Mongolia coming in, as well as I think a lot of these Senegalese wrestlers
For
are
sure.
watching Rugrug.
Yeah,
If you
I
know
like that
who,
guy.
I love that guy, man. I love it. Have you seen? I've watched some videos from training, and all I can say is that the guy is resilient. What do I mean by that? He gives 100%, man. And they are beasts. Like, he might look his size, but I think he's the strength of guys who are like another 50 kilos on top.
Yeah,
And they're
that's a
not afraid of getting hit too. You're going to
thing.
hit them. They get hit without gloves.
100%. And like you look at it, it's kind of reminds me of my Mongolian wrestling, that it's traditional, and then almost everybody, it seems like, does it in Senegal. And there's no weight class, I think, in their in lamb, so that's what they call it. And
Yeah.
they have lamb where you have
Lamb
strikes,
and Wolof. Yeah.
yeah, and they have one without the strikes, so they know how to do both. And it's because of the rule set, they have to be fast, because it could be end up on the ground. Like, as long as you touch the ground, I think you're pretty much lost the whole thing. So it really makes them smart.
Did you see there was a show where Cain Velasquez traveled to the Ivory Coast in Senegal, and he wrestled with them, and he came out and he's like, "Listen, these guys know how to wrestle. Okay, maybe it's not as polished, but you could see. And I just say, like, wait, I mean, we saw with Nagano, he wasn't a Senegalese wrestler, but he had that physicality and mentality. I'm a huge Nagano fan, and I'm sure he had a very hard year because his son passed away and everything, but the guy had just physicality, and I think people don't realize that what's coming in the future.
Yeah, for
So
sure. I think the Asian countries, like, they say, there's a saying Napoleon said that, um, when China wakes up, the world will shake, right? I
oh
think
yeah,
that's the game for us, go for Africa, because people forget that Africa is one of the cradles for civilizations. You go to
for
Egypt,
sure.
the Horn of Africa with Ethiopia and Eritrea.
So,
It's just a matter of time before people start realizing that those guys, they have a younger population, most of them, and they're hungry. So
they're hungry, they have belief in God, they have a reason, and they don't complain. Like, what do I mean by that is, like, if they don't get their half calf latte, mochaccino, wappuccino, pumpkin spice, whatever it's called, they don't care. They're like, listen, where do I fight? where do we compete? You know what I mean? And you see it actually in soccer. Like, every World Cup, the African teams just become more and more dangerous. And eventually, I mean, South America is pretty hard to beat, right? But eventually they're going to become more and more of a threat, where people aren't going to say, oh, we have to worry about, for example, Netherlands, although they do. That's a great team. But they're going to say, oh, we have Nigeria now, and it's going to be a physical game, right? So, yeah, I agree.
but definitely, even if you look at at least in judo and sambo, like, you'll see more people competing from those countries. And I think if people say, "Oh, the IGF want to get rid of the rules because wrestlers are winning," I'm like, that's not why. It's because they want to make judo popular. So they want to take it from sports like tennis, where everybody fights everybody, everybody competes against everybody, and it's actually, to qualify on the national team and to compete at the Olympics is a super hard process, especially if you're from North America. But you'll see that it's becoming more even playing field. You'll see guys from Uzbekistan using Koresh. Georgia has always been good, and
Yeah.
they're just figuring out how to adapt to the rule set. And then the good thing with judo, it's not just the techniques that make judo judo; it's the philosophy. So judo is really meant to be for everyone, whether you're a recreational player, you're elite level athlete. The ideal for judo is really for everybody, right? Mutual respect and benefit. And this is what I think I like judo for. And actually, sambo has a bit of that, although it's a little bit, not sure, it's more about sportsmanship. So that's why I like about those two sports. And they're more scholastic. You'll see those more in schools across the world.
Yeah, I think in judo as well, it truly is, at least right now, the international martial art. because it really does include everyone in it. It doesn't matter. There was, I'll give you a very, very interesting story, and I'm pretty sure you knew it. Saeed Imole from
Oh,
Iran.
yes. Yeah.
So he was a beast. He still is. Really top level judo. He had a match with an Israeli named Sagi Muki. Two enemy countries don't get along, but judo brought them together. Judo also, they became friends actually after. And Moulay actually had to leave. I think he went to train compete for Mongolia.
Mhm.
But through judo, you can break boundaries, right? And I really believe that. And the reason I believe it is, I can't speak for judo, but in wrestling, I've always said, if let's say you and I wrestle, okay, you're going to know who I am within 20 seconds. Am I aggressive? Am I not a nice guy? Am I a nice guy? And if we train, and I think this is the beauty, is that you, outside the mat, judo, wrestling, whatever, you could have a millionaire, you could have a guy who works at a gas station, you could have a guy who's an accountant, but on the mat they're all equal. Right.
That's
And they have a philosophy for that. And that, I think, is kind of missing right now in a lot of the martial arts in the West. Not judo, of course. Do you teach judo, right?
yes.
So when you're teaching kids, I remember my son did judo for 8 years, and he was competing nationally, etc. But the thing I loved is, before the tournaments, they had these videos about what judo was, and goes, it's about respect, like, and man, do you go through that with with the children in your class as well?
So when I teach at my club, usually I teach like it's more the BJJ or the striking, but I do try and go through the respect for sure. Like whenever I teach kids or even the adults, I remember that, hey, listen, you gotta respect each other, right? We can't just be going 100% all the time. You have to respect yourself by falling properly, and then you can respect your opponent. If you can't do either one, then I don't think you have a place here, right? Because people will just drill like they're fighting. I'm like, no, that's not the point. You're gonna hurt yourself. You hurt your uke or tori, and you have to show me that you can respect yourself, right? Because some people will like get injured and come like, okay, you can watch, but you sit out. I'd rather you not get injured again, because it's really easy once you have an injury to get further injured, to even get more grievous injury.
Yeah. Now, I saw you're the grappling coach at Precision Martial Arts. How's that going?
It's pretty good. Noticed that a lot of the students, even if it's their first time doing stand-up, they're in the movement really well. Like instead of moving linearly all the time, now they're doing circular movement, which is harder and more natural. And they started doing that, and it's really catching up. My co-coach, he actually is getting a CCP, so he's getting accreditation to grade students, and we can do tournaments with them. I might do that in this future too. That's so like we can expand the program, right? Because I feel like the more you are able to put yourself in an area of discomfort, it makes you a better martial arts, a better person, right? So being uncomfortable becomes like a natural state almost.
Do you see that judo in Canada is growing at a good pace?
And actually, in some ways, yeah, I think now it has to learn to adapt to jiu-jitsu's popularity. So like a lot of the newer clubs are taking on to MMA programs or jiu-jitsu programs, and they're really starting to see benefit. Of course, some people say judo doesn't work, and they're like, my wrestling will work. I'm like, well, are you like on the Olympic team for wrestling? Are you? It's just
Yeah,
a different quality, because you'll see even Saitia brothers, they had judo-like throws. So it does work. Doesn't matter if you call it, head arm throw or koshiguruma. They exist for a reason.
absolutely. Actually, in Canada, you have um, Shadi
Mm-hmm.
El Nahasi. He is so impressive, man,
Mm-hmm.
as a judoka. And I was kind of surprised that Canada had such good judo. The only time I saw that level was Nicholas Gill
Yeah.
years ago.
So I think, yeah,
Have you
it's
met
pretty
Shadi?
cool. I met Shadi like up like when he was younger, like way way younger. We had Luciano Queira from Brazil came over to the seminar, and then that was before Shadi was who he is today. And I was there for the seminar. It was pretty cool to see them grow up, because even I think just Clem can remember her seeing at some tournaments when I was younger. And Krista Deguchi, they're both the same categories,
Yes,
and so they're killing it. And I really hope that they especially grow, because then my daughter can have somebody else to look up towards. That's just not just a boy, right? Like, 'cause you
absolutely.
can get inspired by, in a way, but there's also something you can see Rick Otani, like a woman do it, and it really opens the sport up to everybody.
Oh yeah, women's judo actually is quite amazing because some of them are so talented and they really have to use technique, right? They're forced to. They can't. I have to admit though, some of the heavyweight women judokas, I am wondering how much they weigh. Just seeing it, because
Yeah.
you got some beasts there, man. Like that are big, but listen, they still do it, and it shows that judo is for everyone. It doesn't matter if you weigh the who knows 200 kilos or you weigh 48 kilos. You got your division, and may the best man or woman win.
Yeah.
You know.
And like I find now, for whatever reason, a lot of the athletes, people would assume that grapplers they have weird faces or whatever, but like the athletes that come out now, they're like very able to keep their masculine and feminine and be like prideful in their image, you know. So they're able to represent. Like I think the guy from Italy, Fabio Basile, and Daria Blodi, they're models too. So it's kind of cool to see that. Like it's breaking boundaries in terms of what perception, right? So,
Oh yeah.
and they're also self-confident themselves. They don't care if they get Versace or GQ magazine. They care about their own development, which is even better, right? Because all this other stuff's on the side gig. Their main focus is doing sport.
I mean, Fabio Basile was he was so fast, man.
Oh man, and
I
like he
remember
wasn't
I
even
was
supposed to be
just
at the Olympics either. You know that? Like he was.
really.
Yeah, he was so at the Grand Prix before he went to qualify for the Olympics, he had to win that whole thing, and he did, or else he wouldn't be able to qualify for the team at all. And then he wasn't even like a high ranking seed for the tournament, and then beat everybody in decisive manner. So he's kind of like the Cinderella man of judo.
For sure. And he's such a good, he looks like such a good guy. I saw once he was training with Chamizo. I don't know who was training for what. I don't know if they were training for wrestling or for judo, but it was such a pleasure to watch two top athletes of wrestling and judo. And it was with no gi. I think they actually did low gi, but it was so interesting to watch, right? And Fabio did throw him, and I think Chamizo, of course, I think took him down. But if anyone says judo isn't effective, it is. It's just if you learn it properly and how to implement it.
Oh, 100%. And like even if you look at Kamal Khan Magomedov, he was training with somebody, in, I think it was at one of the Caucasus, maybe Dagestan, but it could be one of the other republics in the Kavkaz region. And he threw a wrestler, and then of course back and forth. But I was like, it's all about mentality, how you apply, and of course the difference between judo and wrestling is that wrestling is primarily just based on results. I'm not saying that because there's no real recreational outlet for them. Where judo, there's going to be the guys just there to have fun, and, not take it as seriously, which is good too. I hope that wrestling does have that because I think there's a lot of people who want to wrestle, but there's that error, that boundary, right? So.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. Like judo has levels, and I think it's a good thing that they also have levels for people who they want to be a hobbyist, right? Not everyone wants. I mean, a guy who has like 3, 4 kids. I don't know if that happens anymore, but hopefully it does. But a guy has 3, 4 kids. He's working a job. The last thing he wants to do is go and not be able to work for 2 or 3 weeks because he hurt his elbow, right, or his knee. So I definitely think you're right on that. In wrestling, it's much less. Usually, the guys you don't see many older wrestlers. That's the first, and also the you can't really go easy in wrestling. You could, but it's not the culture wrestling. And I do think that had it been able to do like wrestling for like hobbyists, I think it would be really good. I think it would be very successful actually because I think it's very fun to do. It's very interesting. Where do you see yourself in the next 10 years in terms of martial arts?
10 years?
UFC champion.
Oh, maybe. But they have a veterans division. But I definitely would like to try MMA, at least amateur, to see how it goes. But I would like to compete internationally still at judo and sambo, whether it's sport or combat for sambo. And judo is always master's division. It's my sensei, so her name's Sensei Mara Markovic. She was competing with what was called Masters Division, so she was always an inspiration for me to compete. And then Wayne Erdman, he's another one of my senseis. He's still got it. Like even though he's older and doesn't compete as much, if you're not careful, he'll sleep you with his chokes or he'll throw you like
Yeah.
way over the head. Yeah, so like he trained with some very strong guys. It's like Okano, he trained with Okano and Kimura, and like it's good to have the older guys because they could tell you the benefits of like what to do, how to train, and what tools we have that they can't take advantage of, right? Because he said like he had to go to Japan and spend maybe half a year to get 2 techniques or 3 techniques. Now we have YouTube, and like and even now you can tell who's a good coach because within there's a language barrier. I find with Russian and Japanese, they can communicate with you just by showing the technique itself.
Yeah. I found that with high level wrestlers from Russia as well. They can just show they're so good at it. It's just they make it easy.
Mhm.
It's very true, you know. Now, huge fight that might come into the UFC, hopefully. And I want to know who you're going to take to win. Because actually, one of these guys has got your background. Islam versus Topuria. Who you
Oh yeah.
got? It's a
So
tough one, huh?
I like both of them because like Tupura, he's a Georgian, but he grew up from Spain, so he speaks Spanish pretty good. But
Yeah.
so I might be a little bit biased, and you know we have the same haircut almost, but Islam is, I think he's getting up there. Like it's the lightweight division is different, and I think he'll have to focus on his grappling for this one. Like really focus on getting to the wrestling part, and then maybe Tupura. But the Tupura, to his credit, um, he fought a lot of grapplers, right? And he gave them a lot of trouble with his footwork. Not
His
saying that,
grappling is not a joke as well. Topuria can grapple. He has wrestling, a good Greco background, but it's not the same wrestling, in my opinion, as Islam.
yeah, this actually might be a good replacement for Arma Sarukian, the replacement, because Sarukian I
Yeah.
thought would have been a great fight because he fought Islam and it looked like a great match. Like that's what you wanted. That's what I wanted to see in MMA, like striking with
Yeah.
the wrestling, with escapes and
Just
everything.
moving from position and from like, I agree. You want to see multi positional fights, right?
Mm-hmm. So, um, I think I might want Islam to win, but I'll be happy with the result either way. To be honest, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. You know, Tapira, they asked him. I think it was on Patrick Bet David. I'm not sure if that was what he said, but apparently his influence when he boxed was Canelo, which you can see, man. You can definitely see that. You
Mhm.
know, but his fists are very scary. I mean, he when he throws their bombs, everything is coming to just decimate your facial structure. But that's MMA, and that's the rules of the game. You're not in there to play ping pong, right?
100%. That makes a huge difference too. Like this is the way it's scored, right? It's scored to the finish usually, especially Pride rules. Remember Pride? That was
Oh,
my
the
favorite.
best. My favorite by far. And also the build up and the style versus style. And I think Pride took the it's a controversial topic, but I think no matter what, I think steroids will be in the game
Yeah.
somewhere. And Pride just said, okay, here you go.
Mhm.
Which, regardless if it's ethical, not ethical, it did make for really good fights that were a little bit more, I guess you could say, fair, if
Yeah.
that makes sense. But
It's,
holy.
yeah, it's definitely, it's kind of like that old joke that I think John Witherspoon said. It's like, if I want to watch sports and see a home run every time, so we got to have a league for steroids and a league not for steroids. I guess that was that version. You know?
I remember when I was a teen, Sammy Sosa just smashing them out, man, you know?
Yeah.
And like, okay, so he was drinking a bit of cherry juice. So at the end of the day,
Yeah.
uh, but yeah. Now, Enrique, what do you want to tell our audience? You know, what do you have going on and how can they find you?
Okay, so right now I'm debating what's my next competition, right? So I was thinking about maybe Pan Americans for Samba. I was thought to see if it's a doable with my baby and a couple other things.
Yeah.
But I'm definitely for sure want to compete in. There's a tournament in Michigan, so if you guys are interested, it's going to be most likely in Troy, Michigan area. My friend David Dempsey is holding it. It's going to have combat sambo and sport, and it's really friendly for beginners as well as people who want to experience this sambo. So you can go to that. You can find him on Instagram. I'm on Instagram mostly. That's my favorite place to be for this kind of allocating people. So my tag is Nikoya Judoka. You can look me up also Enrique Matute. you'll probably see a whole bunch of pictures of me. And yeah, shoot me a text. I might not get back right away, but I try to. But yeah, that's what I do. Like the thing you'll see on my Instagram is a lot. I like history a lot. You'll see that. You'll see combat sports, and I like philosophy and religion. Obviously, I'm a theology guy, so like you'll see that. Like for example, for Easter, I try to show people examples of what the roots for Christianity was. So like people forget that Jesus was Jewish. He grew up in the Second Temple Judaism, so it looked different. So I want the people forget the context of why he was speaking. So yeah.
Yeah. And guys, I'm going to put everything where you can find Enrique, and I do recommend joining his Instagram. That's actually how I found him. I was like, who is this guy, man? And he was really, really rolling well and throwing people with like really crisp and polished throws. So, and I made a video about him, about you. And I don't know why I'm talking about you in the third person. Am I George Costanza or something? That probably isn't the third person, and that's why I was a wrestler. But anyways, you know, but when I made the video, a lot of Sambo community sent me messages saying, man, I love Enrique. He's really top level. And I got to agree. So I would definitely check him out for you. And regarding me, if you like this episode, I definitely invite you to join the podcast or subscribe to the podcast, as well as my YouTube channel and Instagram. And also I have some shirts for Grapplezilla gear. This is the Alexander Karelin shirt, and hey, everything you do, it's all good quality, and it helps support the podcast. And if not, listen, it's all cool. Watch anyways. It makes me happy just sharing stories, especially like Enrique and good guys around the world, to help propagate the grappling arts how they should be.
100%.
Enrique, it's been truly a pleasure having you on, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. And hopefully,
Go ahead.
Hopefully, we can talk more. Like I remember the first time we talked was just by accident. Actually, I pocket dialed you, and you just poke. I'm like, okay, we'll talk now, right?
Yeah, you were a cool guy, man, and I was just like, oh, this guy's cool, very knowledgeable, so it was cool, and for you guys, thank you very much for watching, and as usual, grab, throw, and tap.